r/askreddit. Police officers of Reddit. What are you thinking when you see cases like George Floyd?
Horrified. When you have someone in custody, you are responsible for their safety and well-being.
I have a degree in law enforcement and work in corrections in Minnesota. My thoughts are, taught to fuck that guy. Nobody is taught to put their knee on a guy's neck and leave it there until he passes out and dies. He may as well have had his hands around the man's neck. If I were to go off the video evidence, the officer should be arrested for murder.
That's the crazy thing about this case. It couldn't be more blatant. The footage was clear, long-lasting, and heart-wrenching. If there isn't hell to pay with this clear of evidence, then protests are absolutely justified.
The Rodney King case had the same type of evidence, and look where that went. I can't understand why, but these cops can get away with murder with a slap on the wrist, unfortunately.
Not a local, a Fed. 5 years into the job, George Floyd was murdered, and it's effing disgusting. We're trained that anything involving the neck is a no-go and is considered deadly for source. We were also trained that if you make an arrest in a prone position, you search and then immediately move them onto their side or a seated position because the risk of asphyxiation is so great. If a suspect says they can't breathe, believe them and take measures to correct to it. This training is reinforced at least twice a year in our use of force training. These officers deserve to spend the rest of their lives in prison.
I'm a former police officer, and so have had plenty of training in physical restraint of individuals being arrested. There's no police academy training officers to kneel on someone's neck to subdue them. That's how you kill a person. There is extensive training on how to avoid seriously injuring a person while restraining them. And I guarantee you every one of these officers was trained to never strike a person in the neck or choke them. The officer who killed him is very clearly liable for manslaughter at the very least. And I think the other officers who stood by have some accountability as well, because they knew damn well that was not how you handle a person and should have stepped up.
Retired after 28 years. Nothing less than murder. All the guys I worked with would never have considered doing something like that. You treat combative in custodies once they're secured as human beings. Nothing should be personal. Once they've been subdued and you are safe as an officer, you stand him up, pat him down, and understand that your arrestee is at a low point in his life. Give him some dignity, and you'll generally get his respect. It works 90% of the time. That man was subdued, and nobody should have been on him at that point.
Cop here. Disgusted. There are 1,000 reasons why this shouldn't have happened. Simple, easy steps that should have been taken. Lessons that policing has learned over the past 200 years, and basic things taught in every academy. Make no mistake. This was murder. Maybe not premeditated murder, but nonetheless murder. I will be angry if those officers do not get indicted.
He's apparently been involved in at least 2 other deaths, including shooting a fleeing suspect in the back. I don't know, given that history, premeditation seems reasonable.
That is inexcusable.
I'd put a serious tag if I were you.
I don't know. I don't think it's sort of thing people joke about. That said, I reckon there'll be a lot of not a police officer, but comments.
Not a police officer, but I agree. I was a cop in the military. In the police academy, this was one of the things they taught us not to do, as it could crush the windpipe. The only time I was ever taught to use chokes and neck holds was in combat training for deployments. But when we got back, we always had to attend retraining classes to relearn what we can do stateside.
It's amazing that time and time again you see militaries saying, this is exactly not what to do, but for some reason the civilian trainers seem to forget to teach the same. Would I rather be a POW to an American soldier vs. American cop? I'll take soldier every time.
You know what's sad is I've been told police agencies don't want to hire MPs because they're harder to retrain. Yet time and time again, we prove them wrong by being better trained in humanitarianism.
Retired. It disgusts me, as the job is difficult enough as it is, working mostly in sensitive neighborhoods. Brutality like this makes it far more difficult.
How difficult was it for you to build community trust? Did you have to continuously fight against atrocities, such as the recent cases, or was your community more sheltered from those issues?
I'm a police officer in California. I am absolutely disgusted by the officer's actions. When someone is in our custody, you must treat them properly. I don't care if they are arrested for murder or forgery. They are a human with a story, and they deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. I had tears streaming down my face watching the video of George Floyd. We swore to protect our communities, and that's what we set out to do every day. Putting a knee into the neck of a handcuffed man for an extended period of time isn't protecting. A man has lost his life due to the gross negligence of an evil person. May he rest in peace.
Disgusted, especially by the frequency of these events. Glad that I work in a place where we're trained for years before we ever put on a uniform that communication is our greatest tool. I had to know that this is going to happen again and again.
As a Baltimore resident, do you think it's just the sheer size of the force that lets these situations continue to happen? I don't envy the officers who have to essentially work in a war zone, but sometimes it feels like there's no light at the end of our tunnel for making the city safer and for ending police corruption and misconduct.
This and the resulting low standards for admission to the police academy.
For all the police officers here, what would the charges be if one of the bystanders pulled the police officer off of the poor guy? Wow, thanks for gold!
I work for a U.S. federal bureau, but am not a local police officer. All 4 cops need to go to jail. Derek Chauvin, the cop with the knee on George's neck, should have gone to jail long ago. The guy apparently has a history of doing this. This is his 3rd time in 15 years. Black people need to keep fighting, and white/Asian/Latino people need to support them. Justice for cases like this won't come easy, and it won't come soon. But if they keep fighting, I truly believe that one day, eventually, it will come.
As a son of a former police officer, my dad worked really hard to be an honest cop. His department was full of racists. They didn't like him because he was a decent cop. They couldn't do anything wrong in front of him. We saw the news together and I saw him wipe a tear but tried really hard to hide it. I know he's sad and I don't want to push him to talk about it, but we both know things like this is always going to happen. And that is a really sad fact. I can't possibly understand why a human being would do something like this.
I'm British but live in America. There's such a different mindset to policing back home in my experience. Albeit I grew up in the countryside and lived in a quiet city. My friend is an officer today, and he was trained to use his words, not his weapons on first instinct. He said you are supposed to police by consent. It's police service, not force after all. I know Hot Fuzz is a comedy, but when Simon Pegg tells Nick Frost his most important tool is his logbook, it's so true. I never feared the police when we were out and about back home. Probably because your average Bobby doesn't have a gun. In America, I'm not so sure I have that same confidence. Those that join the police to wield power and fear need to be rooted out. Those that stand by and say nothing of their colleagues who do wrong also need to be gone.
Fucking horrified. Regardless of the act committed, you just don't owe that to people. I seriously question the culture on that team. Eat it. Since some people are being a bit dense, I am from another continent. Yes, other countries exist. Yes, I have publicly declared my feelings for this incident on other social media, where my name actually shows. No, I won't do it on here because if we have social media accounts without names on them, they must conform to our regulations, and therefore I have. I place to express myself as a cop and a person at the same time. No, I don't care if you don't like that.
Holy shit, nice bullshit post. Let's do some damage control by letting the cops feed us some sorry and false responses to make them look good. You want the truth? Simple. They don't give a fuck. Tell me, when have you seen a cop stopping another cop when he's slash? She's murdering a perp?
The requirements to become a cop in the USA are laughably low. Edit. But it's not a laughing matter.
Of course you're gonna get cookie, Cutter replies from the officers here on Reddit. They don't want to get downvoted for showing their true faces.
My uncle is a retired police officer, and I called him about this. He said that it's horrible that people like this exist. It has a negative impact on both the police community and the black community. It stirs up animosity between the two, and they end up not trusting. What if a person in the African American community needs to call the police, but don't trust them/fear them? Not all police officers are like this. Many are great people, but the growing number of cases is alarming. Another problem is that because of police unions, officers who should face serious repercussions aren't.
Didn't the same happen in New York a few years ago with Eric Garner being put in a chokehold?
Serious question to the police officers participating in this discussion. Obviously, there are a myriad of factors that possibly contributed to this incident, from poor training to an officer being unfit for duty, etc. My question is, how is it possible that the 3 other officers on the scene took no steps to intervene, or at the very least, check on the status of the victim? Is there any reason for their lack of awareness or decision to stand aside while they, along with many other bystanders, can clearly see the man dying in front of them? What justification, if any, is possible in this situation?
Cops murdered someone exactly like this not far from me last year. They never released their names. They never charged any of the officers, and the police freely admit the kid they killed was never even suspected of a crime. Oddly enough, none of those good cops of law ever revealed the murderers' names or spoke out about the injustice. In fact, they never said a word. I'm starting to wonder where all these good cops are at.
Murder by positional asphyxiation.
I feel like the officer should be arrested, and I think it's just a matter of time until he is. It's usually best to wait to see both sides of the story, but it's clear to me that once he's in handcuffs, he should be at least rolled on his side or seated in an upward position. I just can't grasp why the officer felt it necessary to continually apply pressure to his head/neck area. It just takes a few dumbasses to make all officers look bad. I see Redditors encouraging violent riots, but I'm afraid that's just going to make things worse. There's a huge difference between peaceful protests and riots damaging property.
My roommate's only been a cop for a few years, but he got into a huge rant about how that is not how you choke someone in a way to detain them. The cop should be tried in court for manslaughter at the very least. And if they think they can make a case for murder, go for it.